meant, you know, a lot of NICU time. Welcome back to my channel, and if you are new, welcome to the diary. So this video is going to be my labor and delivery story of this little guy right here. He was my bigger baby, just by a pound and a few ounces, but it was noticeable in my belly growth wise, because with Forrest I did not start showing until I was 8 months, but with this one I looked like I was carrying triplets by the end of my pregnancy. And so I'm gonna start with my last doctor's appointment. I had it on a Thursday. I was exactly 37 weeks because I delivered at 37 weeks in 2 days. And so this was exactly 37 weeks. So I was just starting my weekly appointment, because after 36 weeks you go weekly. So I was just started my weekly appointments, and so I had that. And just a little back into it, when I was around 29 weeks, I did go into preterm labor. Contractions had gotten very painful and they were very close and regular, so I did have to go into the hospital because we were all a little worried, because I was only 29 weeks, so that would have meant, you know, a lot of NICU time and everything, and it was just something we were preparing ourselves for, but it wasn't necessarily something that we were ready to embark on. But thankfully, thanks to some steroid shots and some bed rest, I was able to carry until 37 weeks. But it was that started off as a scary time for everybody, because we all thought that I was gonna have him early due to the contractions and due to I did start dilating, which they did say that in second-time moms, and the more babies you have, you do tend to dilate earlier, but it was still something that they were concerned about, that I was dilating. And I didn't get further than a 1.5, but it was still something that was a concern. And so, and also I just want to sidebar here. We're all in our pajamas. It is pajama day at my house. Like, none of us felt good to fully dress up today. Like, see, this one's still that. And the other one, he did get a nasty little boo-boo today, so he's not felt the best. He's not felt the best. And I wasn't gonna force them to get into some everyday clothes when they would have felt better in their pajamas. So that is what we did. We just stayed in our PJs, and we're just gonna lounge around all day. And so, going back into it, after that, I did go until 37 weeks. So I did go into 37 weeks. At my last doctor's appointment, she checked me, because I told her that I had been having some Braxton Hicks and they were pretty strong. So she did check me. I was at a 3, but I hadn't dilated from the time of going into preterm labor. This was just a very recent, because she was, as soon as I hit in the 30s, 34, she did start checking me very easily. That way she could monitor if I was dilating, if I was still dilating in a lot. Mom of 2, guys. And ignore his hair. It is time for a bang trim, so it is going to be a little all over the place and in his face. But he doesn't really like a haircut, so we're just going to do a little bit of a trimming on the bangs just to make sure they stay out of his eyes. So going back into it, she did check me from 34 weeks up until I had him, just because of going into preterm. And I also want to go back a little bit. I know I'm a little scatterbrained a lot. So I'm very scatterbrained. So I want to go back into around 35 and 36 weeks. There was talk of having to have a C-section, because this little guy was breached and he didn't show any signs of wanting to turn. He didn't show any signs of wanting to flip head down. So he was breached for the longest time, and that was a big concern. So that was one of the biggest concerns. But finally he did turn, and I was able to have him naturally, but that was just one of our biggest worries, was that I was going to have to schedule a C-section and have to have a C-section with him. And so after that, at 37 weeks, she did check me. I did progress to a 3. I was half thinned, which is 50%. And so she didn't think I was going to go into labor on my own before then, but she said there was also that possibility that I was going to go into labor on my own, but she was going to schedule an appointment for that next following week just to make sure I was safe. And at that appointment, she was going to sweep my membranes and see if that would do anything because, like I said, I was miserable. My midwife knew that I was miserable, so she was trying to help me, but also she didn't want to send me into an early. That way he would also have just a little bit more time in there too. And so after that, I did go home. We did rest for a day. I didn't get that sudden burst of energy right before having him as I did with Forrest. It was more of I just stayed miserable and I stayed sick. With my pregnancy with him, I stayed sick. I swore he was going to come out a girl. Even after we got the ultrasounds, I said boy. I swore he was going to come out a girl because of how sick I stayed. Anyways, I had that Thursday, and then that Friday, we didn't do anything big. It was mostly just like rest. We did go run errands. We did just like run around and everything. Justin had gotten off work, and he wasn't working at the same company when I had him as when I did Forrest. With Forrest, he worked at a little factory, but with Addison, he had gotten on with my dad, so he was working in construction. And they did have him in a little site, on a little site that was close to home, like very close to home. It was in the same town. That way, when I did go into labor, it wasn't necessarily he was having to rush out like my dad did whenever I had Forrest. And so Justin just got off work. We went and ran some errands. We went and hung out with some friends, and that was it. Other than that, like, there wasn't any, like, big change. So that Saturday, it was Justin's mom's work picnic, and so we did plan to go just because it was something to have, like, a little activity out and everything. So that morning of having to go, and this was on June 9th, and so that morning of having to go to his picnic, I woke up at 4 o'clock having a few very mild contractions, and it wasn't like they were super painful, but it was more of they were very uncomfortable, and I couldn't get comfortable to go to sleep, so I laid in bed until they got up. And then me and Justin, we went and ran some errands that morning. I think we went out and we had breakfast. And so I had stayed in pain all day. I did tell Justin when he got up that I was in pain, but I wasn't going to think anything of it until the pain got worse or the pain got closer. Like, when I say pain, I mean contractions. I meant like if the contractions had gotten closer or if the contraction pain had gotten stronger. At that time, they were still, like, they were in a pattern. They were more of a pattern than what Forrest's were. But they weren't necessarily painful. They were just uncomfortable. And so Justin's mom's work picnic was around 12 o'clock. So I think we went and we had breakfast. We went and got a couple things done and that we had needed. And so we met up at Justin's mom's house around 11:30 to go to this picnic. And we had done told her, and we told her to keep it like low. That way it wasn't like going around and everybody was getting excited, because when everybody gets excited, it stops. And so, we did tell her, and his oldest sister did find out, and so she did come to the truck when we had gotten there, and I was in so much, like, I was so uncomfortable and irritable that I snapped on her. Like, in seconds she got to the truck, I snapped, and I felt really bad. I did apologize for it, but, that was something I didn't mean to do, but it was also something, like, I couldn't control, which I probably could have controlled my temper, but I was just in a lot of pain. Not pain, I was just very irritable and uncomfortable. So we did go to the work picnic. And it was outside, and it's the middle of summer, and it was one of our hottest summers. And so we were standing outside. I don't remember exactly the temperature it was. I just know that it was hot. You're okay. You're okay. Yeah. And so we were standing outside, and like, I couldn't eat. I hardly ate anything at breakfast, and I had hardly eaten anything at lunch, which was at the work picnic. And so Justin had finally asked me if I was just ready to go in because something didn't seem right to him. He did think that I was going to have Addison that day. I didn't think I was going to, just because they weren't painful. They were just uncomfortable, and they weren't getting closer. If anything, they were stalling and just like pacing out. And so I was like, well, maybe if I eat and maybe if I sit down, you know, I'll feel better. But I couldn't get comfortable sitting. I couldn't get comfortable standing, squatting. I couldn't get comfortable doing anything. And so I got a hot dog and I sat down and I took a bite of it. And I couldn't eat anything. Like, I was beyond full, but everybody knew that I was hungry just because I hadn't eaten. And so Justin's like, well, take a couple more bites. If you don't take a couple more bites, we're going to go to the hospital. And I was like, I can't eat anything else. I was like, I'm just going to go get a water. Because Justin had cut me off all sodas because I did go into preterm labor due to a urinary tract infection, we later found out. And so he had cut me off all sodas, all caffeine. I had to drink water. And so I went and I got a water and I was drinking a little bit, and then I don't know if it was that the water was cold or if it was just my body, but the contractions started getting a little bit more painful and a little closer together. They hadn't gotten any closer than 15 minutes, which with the way I had went with Forrest, they would get to 15 minutes and then they would space back out. But with him, they got up to 15 minutes and they spaced back out, but then they got back to 15 minutes. And the reason we went in after that was because not only did they go back to being 15 minutes apart, they also got more painful. And so I'd called my grandma and I was like, I think we're just going to go to the hospital. I'm not exactly sure if they're going to keep us. I just need you to watch Forrest for a couple of hours. And my cousin was supposed to be going to Florida with some relatives off of her mom's side of the family, I think. She was supposed to go to Florida with some family, so my grandmother wasn't going to be able to keep Forrest very long because she was possibly going to have to meet up with my cousin's aunt to go. Something like that. And I was like, you know, that's fine if you have to come back. I mean, I'm pretty sure by this time Justin's mom will be up here. And if she needs to, or if we need her to, she won't care to watch him. And so we went in about 3 o'clock. And they held us until 5. They didn't want to check me or anything yet. They just went ahead and put me on the belt monitors to check my contractions and monitor them because I was only 37 weeks and 2 days. And at this time, it was the new cutoff to where preemies gestational had gone to, if they were 37 weeks and under, like exactly 37 weeks, so you had to be 37 plus. I was 37 plus 2 days, so he wasn't considered preemie. He loves lights. He loves them. And so I went in, they had kept me on the monitors. The contractions did stay at 15 minutes apart the whole time I was there. And so one nurse come back in, she had checked me, and she said that I was at a 6. Now, at that previous appointment on Thursday, I was only at a 3, and I was only 50% effaced. And so the nurse checked me, and she goes, oh, well, you're 6 centimeters dilated, and you're fully thinned. And so I was like, oh, okay. And with the way my hospital was and the way the hospital had always told me was 6 centimeters is considered active labor. They will not send you home beyond that point because it's literally touch and go. You can go from 6 to 10 in no time like I did with Forrest. And so they was like, well, we're going to go call your midwife. I'm going to have another nurse come in here and double check just to make sure that I am right. She goes, I'm not always right. Sometimes I'm just a couple off. And so I was like, okay. And so I did call my dad, and Justin did call his mom just to be on the safe side because they did say they were going to admit me. And it was a good thing that I called my dad because my dad and my stepmom love going on motorcycle rides. So they were kind of out a little bit because it was the weekend. And so they were out a little bit. And so it was a good thing that I called them then. That way they were able to go home and get showers and get in the truck. That way they wasn't riding a motorcycle to the hospital because my dad does this thing. He did it with my sister. After she had both of her babies, he did go get her something to eat. And he did the same thing with me after I had Forrest. He went and got me something to eat because I hadn't eaten all day because they wasn't going to let me eat with the epidural. And so with Addison, I did plan to go all natural with him just because I wimped out. I'm not going to say I wasn't able to. I wimped out. And I got the epidural. But with him, I was for sure certain I wanted to go all natural. I didn't want to be laid in the bed the whole time. I wanted to be up. I wanted to be walking. I wanted to use other methods to ease my pain instead of the epidural or pain medication. Where was I? I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna go into the second nurse came in. She did check me. Unfortunately, I was just a centimeter off. I was only at a 5, but my midwife had said to just go ahead and admit me. And she was my primary doctor for my whole pregnancy with Addison. I chose to go with her because I felt more comfortable with her. Nothing against the other doctor that I had. I just didn't feel as comfortable with him and going back to him for my second. And I had always loved going to my midwife, so I chose her to be my primary care doctor for my pregnancy with Addison. And she said to go ahead and admit me. She was on her way to the hospital to break my water. And so she come to the hospital. She checked me and I had gone up to a 6, so she went ahead and she broke my water. And with Addison, it wasn't necessarily as painful because she waited. I had a contraction, but she waited till like the end of it to where it was starting to ease off, which made it like a lot more bearable, I guess, as you could say. And so she had broken my water. Some family members had started showing up. My grandma did come to the hospital. Some miscommunication had gone on with my cousin and her aunt, so she was there. Forrest was there. My best friend had come in, and the whole reason I wanted her there and her husband was because my due date was her husband's birthday, and like we're all really good friends, and he loves Forrest, and that was the reason we told them we was pregnant, because we kept it a secret from a lot of people for a little bit. And so I told them I wanted them to be one of the first to know, just because I was due on his birthday. And so the doctor had come in. She had broke my water. This was around 5 o'clock, 5 or 6. And so I did walk around a little bit and everything. And then my contractions had stalled. And I told them that this had happened with my other labor, that they had to use the internal monitor. They had to use an internal monitor to monitor my contractions. And they said once that happens, I'm bedridden. I have to stay on the bed until after I have him. So I put the internal monitor in for about an hour, and they said the contractions still weren't reading good and that they needed to go ahead and put me on Pitocin to, give my labor a little kick in the butt. And when I got the Pitocin, at 8 o'clock, 7 or 8 o'clock. And so at that time, they had told me, and I was only at like 7 or 8 centimeters, and they told me, if you don't order your Pitocin, if you don't order your epidural now, they go, we're not trying to force you into getting this epidural, but if you don't order it now, then you're not going to be able to have it, and the pain does get too unbearable. She said the only other thing we can do is give you pain shots, but after 8 centimeters, you can't get anything. And so I just went ahead and ordered it, because by this time I knew how the Pitocin was going to be. I had never heard any good stories of mamas in labor who had to have Pitocin. So I went ahead and ordered it because the anesthesiologist that was going to do it was 30 minutes out. And so I went ahead and ordered it, and not too long after they started me on the Pitocin, the contractions picked up and got very painful, very uncomfortable, and I was like, I need the anesthesiologist now. And so by the time I knew she was about to be getting there, I could hear her in the hall talking to the nurses. And I was at 8 centimeters, so she had to get there before I had dilated any further, or I was not going to get the epidural. And I had never heard anything, because I heard one of our friends had to have Pitocin, and she didn't get the epidural, and she said that the after contractions were a lot worse than the contractions on the epidural. And that's what she explained to me was, after you have a baby, your uterus is still contracting down. And so while it's contracting down to go back to the normal size, because it's only supposed to be like the size of your fist, or like, it's supposed to be like very tiny unless you're pregnant or on your period or something like that. And so when it's shrinking back down, you do contract, because it is getting the rest of everything out after delivery and everything like that. And so she said that was more painful than the contractions were on when she was still in labor with her son. So I went ahead and I got the epidural, and when I had gotten it at 8 centimeters, and it never fully kicked in. It only took the edge off. I was still feeling the contractions. I could still move my legs, and with Forrest I didn't have any of that. I couldn't feel my contractions. I couldn't feel my legs. Couldn't move my legs. I swore to everybody I was moving my toes, and I couldn't feel them. I just swore to everybody I was moving my toes because I thought I was. But with Addison, I could still I could still move. I could still like wiggle my toes. I could still like move my feet, move my legs and everything.
Lights on.
And so with that, and then I went to 10, and at 10 o'clock, 9:57 is when they started getting everybody out of the room. I did ask for them to go ahead and check my temperature just in case I was running another fever, because I did do that with Forrest. And so they come in, and I wasn't running a fever. I think it was like a degree above, and it wasn't nothing like horrible. And so after that, it was 10 o'clock because they did have to get the thermometer and everything, but I wasn't running a fever. So my midwife had come in. She had gotten like that little like gowny thing on, and she had gotten her gloves ready, and I started pushing at 10 o'clock. And this little guy was born at 10:04. That's where that extra 4 minutes plays, and it was the easiest 4 minutes ever. It was like 3 contractions and I was done. But I believe it was all in my midwife and how she coached me, because if I had pushed on my instincts, I wouldn't have gotten him out as quickly as I did. I would not have gotten him out as quickly as I did. It would have been a little bit longer, but since I listened to her and I pushed when she told me and I stopped when she told me, because my midwife does half pushes too. And so I done 3 big pushes, and then on the second set of 3, I did 6, which means I done 6 half pushes, and I had him out in 4 minutes. And the first thing I did, and with Addison, I didn't want to cut his cord immediately. That is something a lot of people do not know, is a lot of hospitals will make that a choice. Like, that is your choice whether you want to go ahead and clamp and cut the umbilical cord, but if you want to delay it, they will do that also. And I had done my research on it, and it's where they get a lot of their stem cells. It's a lot of their important antibodies and everything like that. So I did choose to delay the cord clamping and cord cutting. I wanted the cord to turn completely white, and I wanted to stop pulsating, because it does pulsate like a heartbeat. And so my midwife was all for it. She loves that. She practices that. And so she was all for that. And so I delayed the cord, clamping and cutting. And then not too long after that, I delivered the afterbirth and everything like that. And then it gets really nasty there. And so it was, at this time, it was just me and Justin in the room. My dad and a lot of our family was in the waiting room, just because they had Forrest, and it was so late at night. It was well past Forrest's bedtime. They were giving him candy and they were giving him soda, and I don't generally let him have that. Like, it's not like in his everyday thing he gets like 3 cans of soda a day. I only allowed it at this time because I was wanting him to meet his little brother, and I wanted him to have like, you know, I wanted him to be in like a good mood. So I was okay with the candy, and I was okay with a little bit of soda. It wasn't like they were giving him a whole bottles to just himself. It was like a couple sips and stuff. And so 10:04 he was born, and everybody was so shocked that it was like so short of time, but it was all in my midwife, guys. Like, she was the best. I recommend her to any and everybody that comes to me. It's like, I'm pregnant, I'm having a baby, do you have any suggestions? This one, like, she is the best. Like, you know, everything. And so Addison, he did weigh 4 pounds. Not 4 pounds. He was 7 pounds, 9.5 ounces. He was 20 inches and 3/4 long. He was born at 10:04. He was my big baby. He was my strong baby too. He come home holding his head up. He was just. And so that was the story of when I delivered him. He is starting to get a little fussy. I am going to have to put him back down for his nap. He just woke up from his nap, but it's around the time for his nap. And I'm sorry for this little grumpiness coming on. But if that is all for today's video, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you guys are having a great day. You gonna say bye? No? This is my mama's boy. Yeah. Yeah, I know, it's nap time. Anyway, guys, that is all for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. Please subscribe, give this video a thumbs up. Please comment some ideas for some future videos that you would like to see. And I hope you guys have a great day. Goodbye.